Hello, all my fine aviation enthusiast friends. Welcome back to the Airplane Show. This is your pilot and captain, Greg, speaking to you from the cockpit of this Boeing 777-300ER that is currently parked in Miami, Florida. Let's look at our flight today. American Airlines Flight 533, service from Miami, Florida to New York, JFK International Airport. We will be cruising at an altitude of about 39,000 feet today. And sit back and relax and enjoy the flight. While you're on the flight, please click the subscribe button. Please click the thumbs up and leave a like. And leave a comment. Now say it with me. Let's get going and let's get rolling. Let's put some juice in this bird. Push both of the external power buttons to turn on the external power. Then push the battery button. And then all the way up top, push the ADIRU button, the Air Data Inertial Reference Unit button, and then arm the emergency lights. Now we can set up the rest of the plane before we turn on the APU. All right, let me take care of a couple things. This stack of buttons next to the autopilot, push the checklist button, which is on the very bottom left. Next to COM, it says CHKL. And I'm also going to toggle the ADF VOR switches to off on both sides as well for the pilot and co-pilot. Now those are off, and now the checklist is up, and now we can use the touchscreen, click normal, click pre-flight, and then most of these you have to tap to check off. Some of them will activate, like when we turn on the seatbelt signs and the non-smoking sign and the beacon lights and all that, and the auto brake. It'll check off automatically when we do that. I like some of the lights to be up a little higher, even though it's daytime. I just always do this when I get into a plane. And then you can click this button in to turn them on. But as you can see, the parking brake, that's already checked off. Altimeter, we need to plug in the correct inches of mercury. So I'm looking that up right now. I believe it's like 30.15 here in Miami. Let me go to the METAR website and look that up. And then I shall plug it in to the altitude indicator display right there. But you can see on the bottom right of the screen in green, it says 29.92 inches. Let's tap on the baro knob. That's the knob on the upper right there. Tap on it. Rotate the inner circle to adjust your units if you need to. Down there in the bottom, it's 30.15 inches of mercury in Miami currently. We can now check that off the checklist. The next two below that we really can't do in this airplane. It's required noise performance and aircraft noise performance. And then RSVM is reduced vertical separation minimum, which is when we're cruising, and climbing, that's the distance other flights are above us and below us. There's no real way to adjust that. Let's turn the auto brakes to RTO. So take that knob that I just did, switch that down to RTO, and now that part of the checklist is all set. Let's lock the flight door so nobody can get in. And then, of course, lights. I like to adjust the lights again, even though it's daytime and there's probably no need to do it. But now we can check that off. Now we're going to program the FMS. All right, this next part of the checklist, let's go to the FMS and plug everything in. So push the index button, and that will bring us to this page here. The identity button just brings up this screen. Go back to index, push the next button for POS. The button on the top right there, the second one down, push that twice for reference. That puts in KMIA, which is where we are at. Now push the root button, RTE, type in our airport, push the origin button, then type in our destination airport, type that in, push the button on the upper right, click the activate button, now click execute, and we are good there. Now push the DEP arrive button, push the button up on the top left for departure, choose your runway, and now choose your SID, your standard instrument departure, and choose your transition if you so choose. We're going to choose Valley today, and now push the execute button. That's all set. Push index, go to the arrive button next to KJFK, push our star, our standard terminal arrival, which is Cameron 4, and choose our runway, which is ILS 04 left. Push execute. Now that is plugged in. Now we're going to push the legs button, and those boxes down there, that's kind of like discontinuity. We'll fix that later. For now, type in your first waypoint, push execute. After you type it in, and then, type it in, then choose the line next to the buttons. What the hell am I saying? Type in the waypoint, push the button next to the boxes, and then push the execute button. Sorry, I get a little tongue-tied at times when I'm typing and talking at the same time, but we have one more waypoint. It's SLW. Type it in, push the button next to the boxes, and now push the execute button, and that will enter it in. Now we can get rid of the discontinuity. Push next page, push the waypoint on the very top, push the button for it, and that brings it down into the scratch pad down there. Now press the previous page, and now push the button next to the boxes, and that moves that waypoint into that space, and now our route is completely connected. All right, let's fill in the rest of the blanks. Push the index button again, go down to performance, push that button in, and now the third button down on the left for zero fuel, push that button in, and then push it in again. You can see that information entered. Push the next button down for reserves, push it in again, and all that information is now entered. Type in our cruising altitude, push the button on the very top right, and then the one down there for cruise CG, push that button, push it again, and now that enters that set of data. Now push thrust limiter. We're going to type in 50 for the temperature up on the top left. I'll explain after we take off why we put such a high temperature in there, and I'm going to do takeoff 2 because I want to keep the N1 under 90%. That's all done. Push takeoff. Now the very down there towards the bottom right for CG, push that button in, push it in again, push execute, and now on the top left for flaps, push that button in, push it again, push execute, and now all of our V speeds are inputted in, and we are good. We can cross that off our checklist before we start. We can cross off the CDU pre-flight as well, and I will go over the route in a little more detail later, but for now, as far as showing you on the display how the route's connected, I'll go over that a little bit later. But right now, let's plug in our heading. The outer band of green will adjust the bank angle of the airplane. I always leave it on auto, and the inner dial does the heading. The button above will change it from heading to track, and above VS FPA for vehicle speed or flight path angle. Now the altitude knob, the outer ring, will switch it from auto to 1000. When it's in auto, when you scroll slowly, it goes up by like 100 increments, and then if you spin it really fast, it goes up by thousands. All right, now we're going to switch it over to thousands and just scroll over to 39,000 feet for our cruising altitude, and now that is all set. We can now scratch all that out, and now beacons, let's turn the beacon lights on. When you push that button in, that should check it off on the checklist. This scratch pad here is kind of useless on takeoff, but very usable for landing. But being a simulator, let's simulate. Push airport search up top. Push KMIA. That enters that information in. Runway, let's put our runway in. And then we can push calculate if you want. But we're going to simulate the rest of it. So right now, let's find out what the CG is. Right there, it says 25. I believe it's 28. Push the INT reference button. And now we can see the CG on the bottom right. It does say 28. So push the button for show keyboard. Then tap the box. And now for CG, it's highlighted in green. Push clear field. Type in your value, and then when you push hide keyboard, it will then plug it in for you. We're going to do the same thing with the Q and H, and also our weight. Push the int reference button, and then if you go to the performance page, you can see our weight is 252.4. So now we're going to push show keyboard, tap the box for weight, and now clear field, and 252,400. And now we're going to push hide keyboard again, and now that enters it in. And now let's enter in our inches. I have to do some math in order to transfer it over. Look at this math. Ready? Wow! Quick math. To change that, the outer green band will switch it from hectopascals to inches of mercury. So in here in America, at least at this airport, they use inches, which is why we're leaving it there. But now we can type in the correct hectopascals. Remember, push the keyboard button, push the box, clear it, type it in, hide keyboard, and now we are all set. For landing, this page is very useful, but for takeoff, it doesn't really do anything. But it's more stuff to play with, more stuff to show you, and more stuff to simulate. Just like these buttons that do absolutely nothing. However, it's still stuff to touch and turn. This checklist page is complete. Push the normal button on the bottom left. That brings up before taxi. And now we just need to start the engines and the APU and all that. Not in that order, obviously. But on the FMS, push the nav rad button. We're going to type in the ADF frequency. So our first waypoint, the DIW, that is an NDB. So let's type in the ADF, 198.00. Then push the button next to ADF, and that will input it. We really don't need to do this, but I like to have it showing in the display, so that's why I'm typing it in. The knob on the upper left of our control unit there is for minimums. It has barometer and it has radio, I believe is for radar altitude, but if you push the knob in, it will cancel out the display numbers, and then when you start rotating it, it will start to show up again. The radio one I use for setting our decision height. Right now we're going to take the outer green band and turn it so it says baro, and then I match the barometer number to what our altitude is currently.
Minimums.
The little black rectangular buttons underneath the knobs, those adjust what shows up in the map there. Some of the buttons don't really do anything, but it's still stuff to push and things that make clicky sounds, which I like. The knob right above the black buttons that says CTR, when you rotate that, it will adjust how the map shows up, or if it's the route that shows up. If you push the button in, the CTR button, it will bring up the rose compass. And then if you push it again, it will bring up that display. The other knob there, when you rotate that, that adjusts how many miles out your radar will zoom into. If you push the button in, it brings up lines for the traffic system. but the traffic system does not work in this airplane, so you can certainly have it in if you want, but I'm not going to. Now let's check out our route. So under the legs page, you see that button that says steps on the bottom right. Now when you have the route up there and you push the steps button, it will step you through each one of the waypoints in our route. So let's just keep on pushing step, and we will step all along this route. And here we go. This is the beginning of our instrument arrival and then the ILS, and we are good. Our route is completely connected, so now we can just put it back on the regular map where I like it. And I'm going to zoom all the way in for takeoff, and I'm going to set up the co-pilot side in a very similar fashion because the co-pilot doesn't have any hands, and it's very tough for him to move these knobs. Alright, let's push the electric button on the stack of buttons next to the autopilot stack of buttons. Let's push electric, and we're getting ready to fire up the APU, but nothing actually shows up there like it's supposed to. Thank you, Aerofly. But let's start the APU. Take the APU knob and spin it and hold it on start for a few moments. And now we just need to wait for APU running to show up in our message center down below. While we're waiting for the APU to fire up, let's turn on our TCAS system so we can get rid of that message. So let's go down to the pedestal, and right here where it says TCAS on the right, just take that knob, tap it, and rotate it all the way to the right. And now our TCAS system is on. APU is running. Yes! The generators are already on too. So at this point now we can turn off the external power. So push both of the external power buttons. And now we are just running on the APU power. The screens will flash a little bit. Now we are good to go. Now we're going to push the engine button so we can bring up that engine page. And we're going to keep an eye on those white circles, or half circles. When we start the engines, we need to wait for the box to say 20, or very close to 20, before we start the engine. Push all the fuel pump switches. So now they're all on. Take the start knob for engine number 2, turn it to the right. And now once this gets up close to 20, we're going to turn on the fuel. Alright, go down here, that black knob, just tap it twice and it should flip up in the air. And now engine number 2 is started. Engine number 2 is firing up. Let's turn on engine number 1. Click on the knob. Turn it to start. Let's go down and wait for the little box to say 20. We're very close to 20. And then we'll double tap on the fuel, or tap and drag, whatever your device does. And we are all set for engine number 1. Engine number 1 is rotating. If you would like to adjust what shows up in the co-pilot screen there, just tap on that knob and rotate it, and now you can adjust what shows up in that screen. Now that both engines are fired up, we can turn the APU off by tapping on the knob and then turning it left to off. Checking our flight controls is next, so let's go outside, and I'm going to rotate the iPad right and left and then move it forward and back, and I'm pretty sure everything is going to work properly. We can check flight controls off, and there's no ground equipment in this simulator. Now we are ready. But let me show you something that really pisses me off. See the VOR 112.4? Why is that plugged in already? I have no idea. Let's go to settings and let me show you that I have it off. Settings. Let's go to Flight Assistant, and as you can see, I have off the gears, the flaps, the lights, tuning, which is the nav radio, and auto cockpit, which I have no idea what the fuck that is. So thank you, Aerofly. Thank you very much for making this less immersive by having broken settings. On the Copilot FMS, let's push the init ref button, and now we can see our flaps are 15. So now let's set our flaps to 15, and I believe we are just about ready for taxiing to the runway. That part is now done in the checklist. Push normal, and now after takeoff is what we have to worry about next. So let's get rolling to the runway. On the autopilot stack, flip on Flight Director Pilot side and Flight Director Co-Pilot side. Disengage the parking brake by tapping on it, and now we are ready to roll to the runway. Here is our standard instrument departure today. After we take off, we are going to veer off to the right and then head towards Kelly and then Foles, and then after Foles make our turn north to the rest of our route. Let's engage LNAV and VNAV for the rest of our climb. Look at this pretty bird flying. We are all good for the rest of our climb, so let's transition to get ready for our descent. We are getting ready for our descent. I have 1,000 feet in for the altitude. That's 500 feet lower than the glide scope capture point, which I always put in 500 feet lower. So now let's push the VS button and scroll, use the scroller wheel, go minus 2,000. That's pretty much going to be our rate of descent for the remainder of our flight until we get to about 10,000 feet. And then from there on out, we're going to, well, I'll show you when we get there, but that's pretty much going to be our rate of descent until we get to about 10,000 feet. And then we'll slide over and try to capture the localizer and the glide scope and get that soft, buttery touchdown. Here is the arrival chart for today. We are going to follow all the waypoints along, and then when we are about a mile away from Cameron, we are going to make a 90-degree turn to the left, and then once we get to the correct radial, which I believe is 224, I believe. I have to look it up again. But once we get to the correct radial, we are going to make a right turn, pick up the localizer, and get that soft, buttery touchdown. All right, so what we're going to do is click on the airport box. And now there's that green box above the keyboard there. Just start typing in our airport, which is KJFK. So we're going to type that in, and then we're going to click the search ident button because we're searching for this identity. So click on that, and now click on JFK. It fills it in, and now let's choose our runway, which is 04 left. And then when you click the calculate button on the upper right, it will show you what your brakes need to be set to in order to land properly. So 1 and 2, you may overshoot the runway, but 3, 4, and max, you should be fine as long as you land in the touchdown zone. If you want to put in wind and barometric pressure and temperature and weight, you can. I usually do, just to, because it's a simulator. However, it does not change anything with the landing. It doesn't change anything on the bottom. It doesn't adjust any of those lines or numbers. So if you want to, go right ahead. If not, no big deal. You play the simulator how you want to do it. I'm going to do it how I want to do it. You do it how you want to do it. All right, let's push the nav radio button. And we're going to program the left VOR, so 115.90. Now push the upper left button. Now our side VOR on the pilot side is programmed correctly, so we can pick up the correct radial. The ILS frequency and course was already programmed in from Aerofly, even though I have that turned off. But if you would like a deeper definition, not definition, but if you want a deeper tutorial on how to do all that, you can go check out my video, which I put the link in earlier when we programmed the flight, or you can just leave me a comment below, and I'll see if I can help you out. I'm not a pilot in real life, but I do play one on the internet. All right, as you can see now, we are pulling up on Cameron. So what we're going to do now is go up to our display knob, choose VOR, and then push the button in so our rose compass shows up. The course to the runway is 44. Let's make our turn about 90 degrees now. And we are going to now try to pick up the radial. So radials radiate. So from the VOR, the radial that radiates to us is what we need to pick up. We need the 180 degree opposite of 44. So our course to the runway is 44. The opposite of that is 180 degrees in the other direction. So that would be 224. So we need to pick up the 224 radial and then make our turn. So as we get closer to the 224 radial, we will then make a right-hand turn to the airport. And then hopefully our localizer at that point will capture it and help glide us in. But right now we're going to descend about 1,000 to 1,200 feet per minute. We're going to monitor our speed. And right there on that nav radio, it actually shows you what radial we are flying towards. So, you know, if you kind of get confused on where you're at, you can always look down at that nav radio section in the flight management system, and that will show you what radial you are pretty much flying next to or into. But yeah, we need to pick up the 224. Once we get that, then we'll make the turn, and hopefully by then, you know, we're close enough for the localizer to capture and glide us on into the glide scope. Then we get the glide scope, and then we get the softness, we get the butteriness, and we get the touchdowniness. Let's activate the localizer. Go up next to the altitude knob, the LOC button. Push that in. Now our localizer is active. So when we make our turn to the correct heading, hopefully the localizer will start to capture. If you look, we are actually close enough now to make our turn here in a moment. So we're at the 220 radial, as it shows there on the nav radio screen of the FMS. So now that the green arrows are about 90 degrees either side of us, let's make the turn to the right about 90 degrees. And then hopefully the localizer will capture a little bit after we straighten out. On the altitude indicator display, LOC is in white right now. Once it captures, localizer will show up in green, and our display will show that the localizer is captured at that point. We are still trying to capture the localizer, which we should do momentarily. I had to make a little bit of a deviation to the right there, a little bit of a harder turn to the right. As you can see on our display, the ILS name just showed up. So we're going to make just a little bit more of a turn to the right. The localizer should capture any moment, and when it does, it will show up in green on our display, and we'll be all set from there for the plane to travel in the correct direction to the runway. There we go. Localizer is now captured, as you can see in green. Now that that's captured, let's push the approach button right under localizer. Push the approach button, APP, and now we are all set for capturing the glide scope. The localizer is now good, so now our plane will line up automatically. Pay attention to your speed, pay attention to your altitude, and we should be good to go. I'm going to switch this display back now just so I can kind of see where we're at. And yes, we are turning towards the runway. You can see in our altitude indicator display now that pink diamond has shown up on the right. Right now it is above us, which means that the capture point for the glide scope is above us. So we'll slow our descent down a little bit. We're at minus 500 vertical feet per minute. And once that captures, then at that point, you can let this plane do a full landing. This is a Category 3 ILS with this plane, meaning that it will roll out and flare all on its own. I'm not going to do that. I like to try to put the wheels down myself. But yeah, as soon as this pink triangle, not pink triangle, I do like pink triangles, but this one's a pink diamond. If once that gets closer to the center, it'll capture, and then we'll be all set for the remainder of the flight. Just like I said, pay attention to speed, pay attention to your flaps, and ride this bird on in and put it back in its cage. Now that the glide scope is captured, let me recalibrate this iPad by putting it on my belly. Those of you that have been here before know about the belly landing. Those of you who have not been here before, I have a bit of a belly. I'm not scared to admit it. And what I like to do is put that son of a bitch right up on my belly, recalibrate it, and then as long as I don't breathe too hard, the iPad does not move, sway, shake, rattle, swivel, shimmy. It stays right put when I turn the autopilot off when I'm making a landing, which is good. Before I tried the belly trick, I would turn the autopilot off and the plane would go all squirrely on me. Now it stays where it's supposed to.
$2,500. 1,000th. 500. 400. Approaching decision height. 300. Decision height. 200. Decision height.
I think we gonna get a touchdown. Let's see here. Is it soft? Is it buttery? Is it a touchdown? It's all three! Look at that, boy! All three, soft, buttery, touchdown. We're gonna check that out in instant replay, but that's good. Anytime we can put the bird back in the cage, a soft, buttery bird, it's a good day. Let's check this shit out. By the way, I do want to thank you for stopping by today and coming aboard this flight with me. If you haven't already, please click the like button. Please subscribe. Please leave a comment and share this video. I make these about every day. I play this about every day. And we're going to see how these wheels end up on the tarmac. Oh, look at that. It's a thing of beauty right there. Could have been a little softer, but I'll take it. But anyways, this is your pilot and your Captain Greg signing off. Thank you very much for flying the friendly skies with me today. Until our next flight, who knows what kind of plane, who knows where we'll start and where we'll land. If you have any requests, leave a comment down below. Check y'all out next time. See ya.